Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you all to a very special call. I was having a conversation with one of my dearest friends that we've been knowing each other since we were kids. She is a phenomenal filmmaker, director, artist, writer, and we were talking about money, just having a money conversation. And we've had these conversations periodically over the years, but we didn't really take it beyond that. And I know many of you that are watching this playback right now have had similar conversations with your own people, privately, quietly, but not in an open forum, not in a way that we could share and benefit our community of artists and creatives. So we're going to get into some things tonight. We're not going to obviously be able to cover everything tonight, but we're going to give you a starting point, and then we'll talk about creating a schedule where we can come together throughout the year and support each other and really cultivate a community where we're talking about our money mindsets. But first and foremost, I do want to recognize one of the greats, one of the most impactful artists in our community, got his wings and is with the ancestors today, Mr. James Earl Jones, an absolute giant that all of us have been significantly impacted by. I'm confident all of us have been inspired by this phenomenal, exceptional artist who has been putting in the work for decade after decade after decade. We can only say, job well done, sir. You have left a legacy that is worth passing on and telling stories about from generation to generation. What a way to make a mark and leave your stamp. So we salute you, James Earl Jones. Rest easy, and we wish you well on your next adventure. We know that that booming voice is going to be impacting many people wherever that voice is going to be. So salute. So let's get into it. I had just graduated Yale Drama School, and I was auditioning, and I just come out of leagues where you put on a showcase, and then agents are going to pitch you why they should represent you. I just gotten an agent, and I remember going in to audition for Dick Wolf, and Dick Wolf, you all know, Law and Order staple. I think probably I'm going to bet that at least 50 or more percent of the people that are seeing this whenever you're watching it has already been on Law and Order multiple times. It's like working for the county. So it's that steady paycheck, right? So I go in to audition for this new television series that he had created, and it was called Law and Order SVU. And the casting director was excited, brought me back, got more excited. It's like, I'm gonna get you a meeting with Dick. I go in, I meet him, and remember, I had literally had my very last class of drama school about 5 days ago. So everything was like this. It was like going like this, and I was having trouble processing me sitting in front of Dick Wolf and him telling me that I'm, charming and he likes me as an actor, and he's really considering me for this role in this new series. And so I thought the meeting went well. I have no idea. And then I go home and my agent says to me, "Hey, they want to put you on hold." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "They're going to put you on hold for $20,000 a week." I didn't hear anything else he said after $20,000 a week. I literally started paying off my student loans. I was like, I don't have to live in Brooklyn. I'm gonna live in Manhattan. I'm gonna have a doorman. I started planning my mama's vacation. I was like, I'm gonna pay off her house. I was literally like, man, you got to be kidding me. $20,000 a week. And this was back in 1999 when 20,000 a week was like a fortune. It's good money now. So he said that, and I was like, okay. And then he said something about, well, if you get another offer, they'll match it for 20,000 a week. I was like, okay. So didn't know nothing. And week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, and he's like, they haven't made a decision yet. And he says to me, it's between you and another actor. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. My agent, I believe, was just doing his job. Like, he's keeping me confident. He's keeping me in a positive mindset. It could have been between me and 10 other actors. I don't know. So I get a call on the fourth week. Okay. And my agent had just said to me, hey, they haven't made a decision yet, but they're going to start shooting. And I had already met the cast that had been cast. Mariska, there was a sister that was a light-skinned sister that was on in the very, very beginning, but she wasn't there that long. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. And Christopher Maloney, and then I think the bald captain guy. So I met all them. So I'm literally like, it's just a matter of time. My dad calls me. He said, "Hey, is that role that you are up for that show? Is it what did he say? Is it whatever the character's name was? Is it Finn?" I said, "How do you know the name of the character?" He said, "Because Ice-T just signed a deal to do the role." I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "Dad, let me call you back." Hung up the phone, called my agent. I was like, George, did Ice-T get that role? Hold on, let me call you back. He calls me back. He's like, yeah. He's like, sorry, it happens that way. I was like, okay. Now, I share that story because I am so confident that most, if not all of you, have had a similar experience where you're on the verge of something, you're up for something, and you know it can be life changing. That's the nature of the business that we're in. You could write a great film if you're a writer, and you have that meeting and they're looking at it and they're talking about it and they're excited, but you ain't got no money for the film yet. You could be up for that role, and you know, like, I was born to play this role. I'm gonna kill it. You just know that you know that you know. And most of us do not get into this business for the business. We get into it because it's a calling. We get into it because we can't imagine not doing it. So the money, for most, not all, but for most, is always secondary. It's like, okay, if you're going to give me money to do what I love, like, really? I get to do what I love, and on top of that, you're going to pay me? Okay, great. So I'm accustomed, like a lot of you, doing theater. I'm accustomed to making a few $100s a week, and I'll make it work. Like, if you can pay me just enough so I can pay my rent and not have to be on food stamps, I feel like I'm a winner, like I'm a success. So when somebody throws out $20,000 a week, your mind, as it should, goes crazy. Because I didn't have any financial training, because I spent 3 years in conservatory, intensive study, doing plays and working and cultivating and developing. Not one class, you all, not one, on business and financial management and money understanding. Not one. I'm supposed to be at the best school in the United States for actors, and not one class on money. But you want me to spend all my money to come here. You want me to take out loans and go into severe debt so that I can have the name and the quote unquote prestige of graduating from this place. But you ain't spitting no game to me about money and how to think about it, how to cultivate a philosophy around it. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared. You know what? If I could go back, and we all have this moment, I would have sat there in front of Dick Wolf and said, listen, Mr. Wolf, I obviously am the only actor for this role. It doesn't matter who else you've seen. I'm telling you, if you bet on me, you're not going to lose. If I had just had thrown those two sentences in there, I could have increased my probability of outcome significantly. But I didn't know the game back then. It was going too fast. So as performers and artists, I believe that most of us have a baseline of service, a baseline of telling stories, a baseline of transformation, not just our own personal transformation, but the idea and the goal to impact and transform someone else's life by telling those stories. And when that is your baseline, and we know and understand there's a creative process, but there's also a spiritual and energetic dynamic to what we do. It puts us in a very vulnerable position because we will do whatever it takes to get the story on stage, to get the story on the page, to get it off the page and into the audiences that we are confronting. And because of that, people who are business minded, people who have a financial philosophy, can put themselves in a position where they can take advantage of that. We are the talent. So they can play us and position us in such a way where they're gonna milk all of that drive and desire to tell stories and to be a great artist, and position us in such a way that it becomes profitable. And we might miss opportunities and misunderstanding our true worth because we're artists. So Stacy and I were, again, it was the genesis of this was in having that conversation. So Stacy, can you give us a little bit of, your story and how you started, how long you've been a full-time working artist?
One of my friends said, you never say the number of years, you just say over 10 years. So when I'm 80, I'll be over 10 years I've been working in this industry. So I come from another Ivy League of schools of talent, NYU. Similar to Ed, you invest in yourself. You not really are aware of how much of yourself you're investing in terms of time and money. But I was focused when I left there on scripted, and once I left school, I found my way to documentaries. So that is where I've been making my living, and very thankful for that, because for all of us who know documentary, there's not really a lot of money to be made in documentary filmmaking. However, if you get some opportunities, you can make some money in documentary filmmaking. I think, Ed, you just talk about stuff that you kind of wish you had known beforehand. And I think the biggest thing, the elephant in the room, is student debt. I think nobody knows when you sign that whatever it is you have to sign, the agreement, like, I'm going to get 50,000, 60,000, you think that you're going to get it paid off right away. And that's, similar to you. You're just like, okay, this one thing, this one opportunity, I know is going to happen. And you feel so close to it at times, and then it doesn't really happen. So, that investment, I've always bet on myself in the end. However, sometimes that investment doesn't pay off as quickly as you would like. But I was able to really, just being in the space of documentary, be able to work with people who actually understood the value of paying people, particularly filmmakers and directors, producers, their worth. It came a little bit later, but, I can see very easily where it's like, you don't need to starve as an artist. You know what I mean? But I also learned too, you also have to be willing to, you can be humble, but you also have to be able to just, you can do many things with your talent. And I think it goes back to what you said, Ed, about being of service. In those periods, I was also teaching. I don't know how many people here, teach, but, that was a really big, helpful thing for me. But it was a lot of trial and error along the way, and even still kind of learning the process of just how it works, how to maintain, how to just kind of make that dollar become $2, become $20, and so on and so forth.
So we get into this rhythm of to be a working actor. So how many of you all, we hear people make jokes like, oh, what do you do? I'm an actor. Well, what restaurant are you waiting tables at? So right. So that kind of stuff, I never understood why people would ever entertain that. I never understood why people would give that energy. Because to my thinking, and I'm gonna come to Russell, to my thinking, if you dedicate yourself and you put in the work, in my mind, if I couldn't get a job in 12 months, I was in the wrong profession. And so I gave myself that parameter. Like if I don't book something in 12 months, I'll just leave because I'm in the wrong profession. Maybe I'm just being delusional. And being an artist, you have to have hope and optimism. Obviously, hope is not a strategy, but you got to have it. And you have to have an unbelievable, almost that delusional quality, that's supreme confidence. And for some people, and again, I know all of you all have met these people. You all have met people that have that confidence and they don't have the talent. They don't have the skills. And you know immediately. And you're like, this person is never going to work. And it's not in a judgmental way, it's just a self awareness way. So, Russell, you've been in the game for a long time as well. You have sustained yourself as a full time working artist. You have been a part of some historical, um, the theater that you all created, um, the films that you've been in, the roles that you've had on television. Like you're this kid from Cleveland, Ohio. Like you're not supposed to be moving to New York and carving out a space for yourself and having a successful career. So talk to us about your journey, your mindset, and how you've been able to do that.
Thanks for the big ups. I didn't detect any lies, but it is always like an adjustment when I hear somebody else tell me how they see me, and it's positive. And part of that is because the tool that I use the most of the tools that you listed is that like delusional borderline confidence. Like that's the space I'm in most of the time, where I'm just like moving forward irregardless. And it served me because it's a numbers game and you have to be able to somehow process all the rejection, because within the numbers, you're getting a lot of no's, and you just have to somehow keep going forward. Financially, when I look at, and I'm sorry, am I breaking up a little bit?
You're okay.
Am I breaking?
You're okay. You're okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm good. Okay. Financially, the thing that has kept me going is being able to maintain a really, really low overhead. I've been lucky to have rent stabilized apartment for 18 years. And because I never got into, buying designer clothes or, even like having cable TV, like none of those things were on my like must-have list. So that the ebb and flow of getting the checks delivered didn't have me capsize because I was just keeping it low the whole time. And, it's served me, but frankly, I'm ready to move into more of a thrive type situation. So I'm interested to hear like what I should do with what I've accrued so that I can use it more optimally.
It's great. It's great. I'm gonna jump over to Marla. I asked her to hop on because Marla and I have done business together. That's how we first met. I had no idea, not only that she was a performer, but Marla has a ridiculous following. If you remember Tina Turner when she first left Ike and Tina, and she would have like groupies following her everywhere as she was establishing herself as an independent artist. When I tell you that Marla has a significant following, she has a significant following. And I asked her to hop on because she has figured out a way to do good business and to create significant income doing good business while also maintaining her artistic sensibility and performance. So Marla, give us a snapshot of your life and how you're able to do both.
Hi guys, you're making me blush. Well, I have a regular job. I've been a mortgage loan officer for the past 24 years and recording artist and performer since the 80s. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the genre of music that originated from New York called freestyle music, which is more like dance, electronic music from the 80s. I still perform under the name Giggles, so don't laugh. And I'm still touring. We're still filling up stadiums and arenas. And I'm blessed because I started in the 80s and I did this for a long time. I'm also a songwriter. And there was a time where the genre had kind of died down, and there's been like a big resurgence of it. And we've been touring, doing shows everywhere. Blessed to have performed at Madison Square Garden, Radio City Music Hall twice, and many other arenas. So I am blessed to be able to do what I love to do. And I also love my regular job, which is helping families achieve their dream of home ownership. To me, is more like a service. I tell people, yes, there's money, but there's also times that if you don't have a closing because you don't get a paycheck every week, you have no paycheck. So I had to always find ways to make that extra income. And I'm not a person that relies on only one source. And I learned a lot from Ed throughout the years, and being part of different ventures. I cannot rely on one source of income on a commission only job. So I love what I do. It's like I said, I do it. I love to help families, especially when they go to the banks and the banks turn them down without letting them know what you need to do to achieve that dream eventually. So that's what I do for a living: recording artist, songwriter, performer, still doing that, still performing. And besides, I took advantage of my followers that have followed me since the 80s, and I started my own makeup line, which I started 4 years ago. To my surprise, COVID hit right when I launched my line. And I was like so down. I said, oh, this is not going to work. Women have to wear their masks. They're not going to be able to wear the lipsticks. But to my surprise, I sold out twice back to back during COVID, when ladies had to wear the mask, because they were saying that the lipstick did not stick to the mask because they were matte products and vegan, long wear with essential oils. So it's really high end. And I'm expanding my line. Now I'm launching in different medical spas and beauty salons and everything. So I'm putting my products in different places. And besides that, also, since taking advantage of the followers that I also have my merch store where they just go and purchase any attire, hats, t-shirts, anything that has to do with the genre of music. So I cater to DJs, to fans, ladies, babies, cats, dogs. So I have my own brand. It's called Freestyle Girl. And I also created like outfits and things for guys called Freestyle Guy. And I branched out from that, and it's doing really good. So I get to sell my products at concerts, and also people can just go to my website and it's drop shipped, so I don't have to mail anything. So that's just like, what I learned from Ed for many years. You cannot rely on one source of income. I can't be a loan officer because we know how the market is. So we have to find ways to generate that income because we have residual bills. I got that from you. So,
thank you. That's a great share.
Mhm.
Because, Marla, you mentioned a very important point, and all of you all can craft it from your situations.
Mhm.
It's about playing the long game and taking stock of the long game that you've been playing. So, for example, if Russell goes into a situation and he offers his expertise, well, he has a platform to do that from because he's been a working artist. He's been a theater artist, a television actor, a film actor for decades. So he has the credibility, he has the platform, and he can leverage that. I'm not sure what his social media is like, but I know he's got a following. I don't know what it is, but I know he's got a following. And so there are things that he can do from a creative standpoint to bring value to that community. And it's something that, you got to, brainstorm it. But Marla just gave us a great example of saying, hey, I've been playing the long game. So I've got the platform and the credibility because I've got decades of doing this consistently and never letting my fans down. And so when I bring something new, the makeup line, I have the credibility and the relationship with them because I've built it over years. So all of you have been building relationship in some way, shape, or form. Again, I don't know your situations, but think about whatever you've been doing for an extended period of time. Think about the things that you know people have come to you and said, "Hey, we would love to taproot your talent here, here, here." Because that's something you can leverage. There's a story there. I used to get very frustrated because my daughter's mother, her name is Victoria Dillard, and Victoria Dillard was this iconic black beautiful just on screen. She just lit up the screen. So, and if you don't know who it is, she was on Spin City with Michael J. Fox. She was in Coming to America. That was her very first movie. She was in Deep Cover. She was in uh, um, Ricochet with Denzel Washington. So I used to say to her shortly after our daughter was born, you should create something where you tell your story, like your journey and how you got from a high school graduate to a primetime television series. You all know when you get a television series, it's like hitting the freaking lottery. Like it doesn't happen that often, and let alone syndication. So, but she didn't understand what I was trying to communicate to her. I was like, there's so much value in your experience and sharing your story. There's so many up and coming young female actors that would like to have your career. So think about each of you, think about the parts of your journey and the wins that you've experienced, but more importantly, the L's that you've taken, because in the loss is the lesson, but the win is the blessing. We share the lessons because the more L's that we have taken, the greater and more significance the wins that we've experienced. And there's value in your story. There's value in your journey. And maybe some of you haven't been, I'm challenging you to think beyond the scope of what you're accustomed to. Here's the trap. It's one of the greatest traps if you're an artist, particularly if you're an actor. What do we do as actors? What's the one thing we do that is the most important thing? It is to be in the moment. When you're shooting a scene and they're doing it from here and then here and then here, our job is to be in the moment. When you're doing a play and it's the 155th performance, and you know good and doggone well, you have to be present. You got to forget what you did last night. You remember when you were first, doing plays and you had that performance and you was on it and you don't know how you did it, and then you try to replicate what you did and you mess the whole performance up because you try to repeat what you did last night. It don't work that way. You have to learn the hard way. Wait a minute, I got to be present. I got to be in the moment. Well, see, that's great for telling stories on stage, especially if you have to do the performance every night, because it's a new audience member and our job is to give them that experience. It's great for the director that's directing you in film and television because it keeps your performance fresh. The problem is that we will take that into our lives and we're just living in the moment. Woo, I got a paycheck, y'all. Let's go and celebrate. Hey, I just got my residuals. Hey, I just got my tax refund. Let's go out and celebrate. I've been sacrificing. I've been eating out of tuna cans for the last 6 months. I finally got a job. I finally got some money in my pocket. I deserve this. I'm going to live in the moment. YOLO, 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 YOLO. Well, see, the problem with that is that we're not playing for the future. We're not even thinking 5 years out. And so whatever little bit of money we have, oftentimes, new money is dumb money. And that's not unique to artists. That's for everybody. New money is dumb money. And so we will mismanagement. We're not thinking long-term. We're not taking the time to study and develop our financial muscles, our financial intelligence. If you don't have this book, The Intelligent Investor, The Intelligent Investor and the author's name is Benjamin, I think it's Benjamin Graham, but it's The Intelligent Investor. It's the one book that Warren Buffett insisted that we read if you want to learn anything about how to put your money to work for you instead of you only working for it. So because we are wired, think about this, we are wired to live in the moment. We're wired to have this unreasonable optimism, okay? Because we're subjecting ourselves to an industry where, and I'm only going to talk about the actors. Stacy can give us numbers on directors because I don't know them, and Marla can talk about the performers and singers. But I'm sure it's not that different. So in acting, and Russell, you can tell me if I'm off on this. It's over 90% unemployment. The average actor is generating between $5,000 and $7,000 a year in income. If you're making full-time income as an actor and you don't have to do anything else, you're like in the top 3%. This is the problem with how the culture presents actors to society, because what they do is they highlight that top half of 1/2 of 1%, and they tell their stories. And the reason they do it is because they have to get the next crop. They got to have enough of us believe that it's possible. Hey, what's up, man? They got to have enough of us believe that it's possible we can do it. And so now they expand the talent pool, and they can pick from that new crop who all believe, I'm going to be the next Denzel Washington. I'm going to be the next Brad Pitt. I'm going to be the next Cate Blanchett. Well, again, if it's not, like, just do the math. Do the math. People have asked me, like they've asked Russell, like they probably asked you, Shabazz. I don't know your story. I'm just making an assumption. Pascal, I know they've asked you, hey, I want to be a working actor. Oh no, it's worse. They say, I want to be an actor. I'm like, really? You want to be an actor? Yeah. Now this is when they see us coming off stage, right? And maybe it's a Broadway show that we're in, or maybe it's a television, we're shooting and they see us coming out the trailer. First question I ask, when's the last time you did a monologue? A what? A monologue. Like, when's the last time? Like, let me see you spit a monologue. What's that? Okay. When's the last time you did a scene study? Like, you got some of your friends together and you just did some scenes. What you mean? Have you ever read a play? Like, have you read a play? Have you learned some lines? What the hell are you talking about? Because they're so brainwashed by this, I'm going to walk into a room and get discovered. Or, if I'm handsome and I can smile and put a sentence together, maybe I'm like, come on, man. Like, it don't work that way. So we have this opportunity to begin to think differently about how we're set up. Because what happens is actors will create that rhythm. And if you're a working actor, it's dangerous because you work and you got one project and the next project. Next thing you know, you've been working as an actor and doing theater, television, film, and it's like 10, 15 years later, but you don't have $100,000 in your bank account. You don't have $500,000 in your bank account. You don't have $1 million in your bank account. That's okay, Marla. Thank you for hopping on, sweetie. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. And so
Good night,
now
guys.
you're like, and Marla, do you want to say anything before you jump off?
Listen to whatever Ed says. Yes.
I appreciate you. I appreciate
Knowledge
you
is
so
power.
much.
All the best, guys. Bye.
So it's like you look up and you've done something that 99% of the participants are never going to do. You've built a career over an extended period of time. However, you've neglected a significant part of your own portfolio, which is your money management. You all have heard the story of Harrison Ford. Well, the reason Harrison Ford got the part in Star Wars as Han Solo, it wasn't because he was right for the part. Obviously, he was. It was because when he was working on the stage lot and he was doing carpentry because he had mastered that skill. And George Lucas met him while he was a carpenter. And Harrison Ford had an interest in being an actor, but his come from was very different. Why? Because he was making more money as a carpenter than most of his friends who wanted to be actors, who were getting a film here, a TV show there. And he said, when I went in to audition for Star Wars, I didn't need the part. I was making plenty of money as a carpenter. I didn't need the part. I was self-sufficient. His posture and his confidence was totally different. Why? Because he developed a different skill in a different lane. My question to each of you is, what is the skill that you are developing and cultivating in a different lane that can create a solid revenue stream for you? And so I want you to think about some of these questions. Number one, how much do you require in monthly income in order to retire and live out the rest of your days as you like? What is the monthly income that you would require coming in every month, month after month, in order to live out the rest of your days as you like? And you don't have to answer it right now, but that's a question for you. Next question. What is your plan of action to earn that number? What is your plan of action to earn that number? So when you look at how successful people manage their money, number one, the most important thing that you all have in your life is your tax preparer. Whoever prepares your taxes, whoever your tax team is, your accountant, it's one of the most important decisions you're going to make. And you want to take the time and you want to interview, and sometimes you're going to hire someone and they're going to suck, and you're going to realize that sometimes you got to go through a couple of them before you find the right one. If you found the right one the first time, God bless you. The second thing is, what is your money philosophy? So if I bring in $1, what do I do with the $1? What's the first thing I do with that $1? Do I take out 10 cents or a nickel and put it in my long-term investment account? Do I take out another 5 or 10 cents and put it into my business, the business of me, Artist Inc.? Do I only allocate 60% for bills and overhead, or is it 70%? What do you do with $1, every dollar that comes in? Now, maybe some of you have cultivated these disciplines and you've been very consistent with any money that comes in, you break it up and you divide it out. I didn't do that. If I got a TV gig, I was going to spend some of that money. I was going to put some of it back into my business, but I had no thought of like, yeah, I put some money in a CD because I didn't know any better. I was like, I'll put it in a CD and I'll figure out what to do with it. But I never really took the time to develop a financial investment skill. I wasn't reading books on finances back then. I wasn't learning how to grow my money or put my money to work for me. I didn't know anything. And I didn't put forth the effort because I was so dialed in on just being a working actor. The bandwidth that is demanded from each of us, because our business is unique, because we have to pour our soul into it. When you talk to people that work 9-to-5 jobs, they're not talking about putting their soul into it. When you talk to them about if they have a successful career, they're not talking about being completely 100% vulnerable and open to a total stranger and pouring the most intimate parts of your spirit out into that space. And then you got to go on with the rest of your day. They ain't talking like that. There's a price that comes with it. And so that the price isn't too severe, we have to be so vigilant. We have to live like this monastic lifestyle, right? We have to be mindful of our rest, our exercise, our emotional well-being, and our emotional fitness. We have to do all of these things to maintain the ability to walk in a room after room after room in front of a Stacey Holman and pour out our hearts and souls as actors so that we can make an impression on her. Maybe it's not going to be this job, but she's going to remember me. And eventually down the line. So it requires so much bandwidth to be an artist. It's no wonder how most of us don't have any financial instincts or skills 25, 30 years later. Why do you think they have those apartments on 9th Avenue in New York, the artist apartments? Why do you think they have that? Because it's this guaranteed money, right? The problem with that is that you get accustomed to living your life in this box. So the idea that, you know what, I actually am more valuable than this. I can actually create a space and I can generate the type of income where I don't have to live. I can live wherever I want. I can pay whatever the asking price is because I've expanded my worth in the marketplace. What are you worth? How much is an hour of your time worth? Do you know that number? How much is an hour of your time worth? I've had people tell me, well, Ed, I'm priceless. That's not a number. It's not a number. And then I ask them the question, I want you to go look at your bank statements for the last 90 days. And each month, I want you to look at the deposits into your account. And that's going to tell you, you take that number, deposits, the last 3 months, add it up, and then you divide it by the number of hours that you work each day, no matter what, whatever you do. That will tell you what an hour of your time is worth versus what you think it is. Now, it's okay if what you're actually earning is here, but you feel like your value of an hour is here. Well, now you got something, you have a target. And then the question becomes, well, let me start thinking differently on how to raise up my hourly worth so I can hit that target. Because I have value because of my experience. All of you have value because of what you've done and the body of work that you've created and the things that you're doing now. I'm just asking you to start thinking differently about how you're spending some of your leisure time. So, Maria, you're an artist, right? You said you finished rehearsal, right? What's your story?
I am. Thank you. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. It's the right vibration for me. It's the right frequency. So I know I'm meant to be here and I'm grateful. I'm a dance artist. I'm a choreographer and a dancer. I have a dance company. So the residency I'm at, I've brought my company together because we're making a new work.
Fantastic. So choreographer, and then you have a company that you've built?
That's
okay,
right.
You built it from the ground up.
Correct.
Okay. So how long did that take for you to build that from the ground up?
Whew. It's still growing. And I'm grateful to say it's been over 10 years. And what I find myself, well, I mean, it's been 22 years that I've been a dance professional, but
wow.
My dance company has been over 10 years. And I'm grateful to say that we're in a new chapter. I was sharing with Russell, it's a precipice. So I would say we're very firmly established, you know, we're sought after and awarded, and that's new. So I think what I knew how to do was be scrappy and make art with nothing. And now I'm learning how to be discerning, to be judicious. It's very important to me that we're all paid well. And how do I thrive at that kind of next level is where I am. I know how to be poor and make art, but I'm not interested in being poor and making art. So I'm you know, upping my game.
And do you have a price point as a choreographer where you're like, okay, I'm not going below this point. Like, you're going to have to meet me here, or you can go higher. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is fair.
Okay, great. So here's another part of what we do. I didn't know anything about residual income when I got into acting. I never heard of it. And I did my first show was Third Watch, a cop show on NBC. And it was Bobby Cannavale and myself. And I remember like thinking to myself, because this is before anybody knew who he was, I was like, man, this guy's good. And I shot the show, and then I remember whatever it was, a couple months later, I got another check. Like the first check I got blew my mind because it was my first TV gig. I was like, holy crap. And then I got the second check, and I thought they must have made a mistake. Like, how do I get this much money again? So, of course, I'm sprinting to the bank, Russell. I'm sprinting. But before I walk in the bank, I'm like, man, you better call your agent because if I deposit this check and they want it back, I'm going to be pissed. So I called my agent. I was like, yo, George, I think they made a mistake, man. They sent me this check. I was about to deposit, but if I need to send it back, just tell me. He's like, no, 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 Ed, that's your residual. I was like, my what? He's like, that's your residual. I was like, what is that? He's like, well, you know, as long as the show, whenever it airs, you get paid. I was like, what? Changed my life. Changed my life. So, you know, fast forward, here we are 25 years later. I've been getting residual checks every quarter. Like that's crazy. When you all think about it, it's crazy. So that was my first introduction. Now, here's a word for everybody. It's called leverage. Either you're being leveraged or you're creating it. You're either being leveraged or you are creating it. Until you learn how to create leverage, you will be only a paycheck player. You will be a paycheck player. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a paycheck player if your name is LeBron James. He's a paycheck player. His checks are hella big. There's nothing wrong with being a paycheck player if your name is Brad Pitt. His checks are hella big. Stacey Anna Duvernay, she's making some good bank, right? She a paycheck player, but her checks are big. That's not going to be the case for most artists. So you have to develop and learn, how do I create leverage? Because until you can build something that's going to pay you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in multiple time zones, the same way that you have bills that go out, you're always going to be playing catch up. Or you're going to be hoping and waiting and wishing for that big break. And maybe it'll come, maybe it won't. I just don't think that that's a good strategy. I think there's a more intelligent strategy that we all can implement. So I got involved in building businesses and building sales teams. And when I first got involved, I heard, because I went to Yale, I would hear these stories about Angela Bassett, Charles Dutton, Courtney Vance, and they were all doing the same thing that I was doing back in the day because they were trying to make money and they were trying to hustle, okay? So here's the thing. I took the time to learn and develop a new skill outside of acting, but it would pay me the way that I got paid in acting, that I still do with the residual income. The only difference is that my residual income in business, it goes up. So the more, if I put forth the effort, I can give myself a residual income raise each month. I'm not just, you know, watching it. You all know it goes down. Like every year, your checks get a little bit smaller. Sometimes they level off for a while if it's a really big hit. Like Russell was in a fantastic movie, but Russell didn't know that when he shot Traffic. He didn't know it was going to be this iconic film that people still talk about to this day. I didn't know when I was an Inside Man that it was going to be Spike Lee's biggest film ever. I didn't know that. We can't control that. That's just God's grace, luck, whatever you want to call it, beyond our control. I can't teach that. Russell can't teach somebody how to be in a fantastic movie with a great director like Steven Soderbergh. He can't teach that because, again, that's things got to line up. So I got you, Marquise. Excuse me. So we have to take the time to develop and cultivate the skill. The best quote I've come across regarding leverage is, would you rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 people or 100% of your own? Would you rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 people or 100% of your own? So there are some things that you can do and you can think about from a creative standpoint. Maria, I was asking you about your company because when you say the word company, and I could be wrong, but I envision there are people that you have been bringing up, developing, helping them develop their skills and giving them a platform as well to share their talents. And if somebody hires your company, well, there's a fee that comes with that enables you to get those people paid, those artists paid, but you're also able to take a portion of the fee because you're responsible for everything. So your compensation is going to be higher because you're bringing forth a company. Is that true? Great.
That's exactly right.
That's called leverage, ladies and gentlemen. That's Maria creatively putting leverage to work. My proposition to each of you is to get familiar with the business model that I'm specifically talking about. Russell and I have been having this conversation for years. I've always shared with him what I'm doing. Why? Because I want him to know what I'm doing. If I'm having success, I'm going to tell my friends about it. It's just, it just makes sense. I never in my life, okay? And let me put it into a better perspective. I'm doing A Lesson Before Dying, Ernest Gaines. Great play, great book, great play. And I'm obviously the lead in the play. And so it was a 2-theater run. So the first run was in Buffalo at I don't remember the theater, and the second run was in Rochester at the Jiva. So the first run we sold out, completely sold out. And the way the contract was structured, we had the option to opt out or continue to the second theater run. I called my agent because I saw the numbers, and I also knew we had already sold out the second theater that we were going to, so I knew I had leverage. So I said, "Hey, George, call the producers and tell them I would like a raise, a weekly raise." And all I did, I factored in the cost of 1 ticket a week. I wasn't asking for trying to break the bank. I was like, well, 1 ticket a week, because they're already sold out. They can afford 1 ticket a week. And I'm carrying the show. Like I'm it's a lot of work. I didn't think that was unreasonable. Okay. My agent calls them. He calls me back and he's like, they said no. I said, okay. And I'm waiting for him to finish the story. Like, they said no because they, budget is. No, there's no story. He was like, they just said no. I said, that's all they said? He said, yeah. I said, okay, good. Tell him I'm opting out. He was like, what? He's like, I was like, I'm going home. I don't need to be here for this. Like, I felt very disrespected in that moment. Now, I want y'all to understand something. The cast of A Lesson Before Dying, there were some elders in that cast that I had worked with previously in some August Wilson works. These individual artists, very talented, are struggling to pay their rent. And at that time, they were in their 50s. And it really pissed me off. It really bothered me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how are you all okay with this? What are you doing? That's why I was so adamant about, if you're not going to give me any reason that you're not going to give me a raise, I'm out. My agent was freaking out. He was like, I've never had someone. I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You just tell him I'm out. So he calls the producers and says, I'm opting out. The producers then call the casting directors and they tell them what I'm doing to put pressure on me. The casting directors call my agent and say, if he doesn't finish, we will never cast him again. I was like, I don't care. Like, I was like, do you all not understand this is a collaborative process? Like, if you don't have me, this is not happening. If I don't have you, I'm not in the show. There's no one person more important than the other. Are you really trying to strong arm me right now? I was like, George, I don't care. He calls him back. And we're going back and forth, you all, the entire afternoon. All right. So he calls me at the end of business that day. And he says, they're going to give you what you asked for, but you have to commit to not tell any of the other cast members. I said, fine. Like, in my mind, I'm like, I did not understand why everybody wasn't thinking this way. But you know what? A lot of actors, they're just grateful. I'm just grateful to have a job. You know, a lot of actors out here, they ain't working, they waiting tables. I'm grateful to have, yeah, you got to have gratitude, but you can't be a fucking doormat. Excuse my French. Can't be a doormat. And you got to know your worth. You got to know your value. So fast forward. I am on Broadway with Denzel Washington doing Julius Caesar. And then we end up doing Inside Man. Like, we shot it right after we wrapped on Julius Caesar. So I was with him for like, 6, 7 months. And so we had some good conversations. He said a couple of things to me that really made me completely rethink how I'm going about this. He said, and you heard him say this on interviews, it wasn't like a revelation. He was like, yo, he said, I thought I was going to be doing off Broadway, making, $500-600 a week. He's like, he's like, this was God's path for my life. He's like, I didn't plan this. This was God's path. He's like, every role I had, I just put everything I had into it. And I was like, you know what? That's a good point. And maybe, Russell, you've had this where when you look back on it, you're like, did I really like beat out whatever, 20, 30 other actors for the role? Or was I just what they were looking for when I walked in? It's not that we don't work hard on our craft, but you can't. If any of you have been on the other side and watched, like I've watched actors audition, and it's a fascinating process, right? Because you're watching them and you could tell, like it's within a few seconds, you're like, yeah, that's not, no, that ain't, nope, nope. And then somebody comes in, and from the moment they walk in, you're like, and then you're like, oh, damn. And then boom. So when he said that, I started thinking to myself, will my name ever be above the title? I don't know. It's a gamble. Can I be a working actor? Yes. Can I make a living? Yes. But will I ever, be, Denzel? Denzel made $20 million during that. No, I'm sorry. He made $40 million during the 6 months we were together. I made a little bit less. The reason he made $40 million during that time was because he was supposed to shoot American Gangster, and he was supposed to shoot it with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt ended up dropping out, and Denzel had a play or pay contract. So when they put the film back on the shelf, they still had to pay him his fee of $20 million. And then when he shot Inside Man, he got another $20 million. And then he shot American Gangster with Russell Crowe a little bit later. So I was like, okay, I start scratching my head and I start connecting the dots. And Steve Jobs, in his Stanford speech, he talks about when you look back is when you can see how things line up. And we've all had these moments of revelation when we're on this path. I think we do get confirmation if we're in the right space in the right place, because people are, they're respecting you. When you get the respect of your peers, that's probably the biggest compliment you're ever going to get. Bigger than any, New York Times review, which is great, but it's not the same. But when you get it from your peers, it's different. So I remember being off Broadway, and there were 3 people specifically that pulled me to the side and was like, yo, you got game. You need to, blah, blah, blah. The first person was Richard Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss we were doing this play off Broadway. He was like, yo, you need to go to LA, bro. Like, you got it. Like, the it thing, you got it. And I'm thinking in my head, Richard, I'm making $500 a week, bro. And what are you talking about? How am I going to get to LA? Like, I couldn't even conceptualize what does that mean? But I appreciated the respect of my peer. Richard Gere, his wife was in the play. He kept coming back to the play, and each time he would come talk to me. Each time. The last time he came, it was the third time, he kissed me on the cheek in front of the cast. They made fun of me for a week. And he was like, man, you're fucking awesome. You're fucking awesome. And I remember thinking, this is awesome because I grew up watching Richard Gere, like Officer and the Gentleman Richard Gere. Like, I was like, oh shit, this is kind of cool. But then I remember going back to the pragmatism, Maria, and I'm like, how does this translate into a job? Thank you for the compliment. How do I get a job with that? The last person, Josh Brolin. This is when Josh was on his come up. I was doing another play during the day. This was during the New York City Theater Festival. So I was doing another play during the day, and then we have our play at night. Josh came to see me in the other play I was doing and was like, this motherfucker can act. And again, I was like, oh, I got the respect of my peers. And so like, how does this translate into a job again? Because their schedules were booked. Richard Gere, he had been an icon. Richard Dreyfuss, I'll never forget this. Richard Dreyfuss on a break, he had one of those lattes, like the iced coffees, and it was a large. He literally took 2 sips of it and then threw the rest in the trash. I was so incensed. I was so like taking it. I was like, how does this dude have that much money that he could just take 2 sips of a latte and throw it away? Like, I was in that off-Broadway, New York stage actor. I'm living check to check. That one thing, it stayed with me to this day. I still get offended. And it was like nothing to him. And I was thinking to myself, man, one day I'm going to make enough money where if I wanted to, I could do it. I would never do that because I'm not wasteful. But if I wanted to, I could do it. It just drove me. So fast forward to this business model where I create leverage and I help other people to put money in their pocket, to help them develop a skill so they can be self-sufficient. I don't tell people that, don't quit your day job, don't quit what you're doing, but learn this skill. Because once you learn how to create your own residual income on your own and you're not dependent, then you can start to plan and strategically carve out a future for yourself financially. And you're not just at the whim of a job, of a project. Stacey started out by saying, documentary filmmakers, they don't make no money. Stacey's on PBS, y'all. She's got major documentaries. Stacey, what are some of the names of your documentaries?
Gospel, the Black Church, Reconstruction, Making Black America, just a few.
Okay, give us those 3 again, just so you all can write it down if you're watching the recording. Give us those 3 again.
Starting from the most recent back. So Gospel. Second one is Making Black America, the Black Church, Reconstruction. So you'll find it, Henry Louis Gates is the host of all of those series.
So Stacey is in rare air, okay? But documentary filmmakers ain't making no money. But if that's what you love to do, you should be able to do that. But it doesn't mean you neglect the other opportunities that you can create for yourself to generate the revenue. So fast forward, all that stuff those experiences stayed with me. And I remember as an actor, I had no power. I couldn't bring Russell with me on Broadway. I would have loved to have done that. I didn't have no pool. So when I started learning the skill of creating leverage and teaching people how to do it, I began to help people make an extra $500 a week. That's difference making money. And then it went from 500 a week to 2,000 a month. I'm sorry, 4,000 a month. And then it went from 4,000 a month. Now I got people making 8,000 a month. And then it went from 6 to 8 to 10,000 a month. And ladies and gentlemen, over the span of 4.5 years, I was helping people make $100,000 a month. Some of them had no education. Some of them had college degrees. Some of them were working, 9 to 5s, making 60, 80,000 a year. Some of them had been unemployed for 2 years. Like, it was a whole variety. And I'm gonna end with this story, and then we'll do closing comments. There was a young lady that went to Yale as well. We became friends because we met at Yale has like a annual winter gathering and a spring gathering. So we met at the winter gathering in New York. And when I saw her, I was just struck. I was like, damn, like she's striking. Like she just got something. So we started talking. We ended up becoming friends. We ended up hanging out, and we hung out for like we started hanging out like in the winter, and we hung out all the way through the end of the summer. Do y'all remember when Mike Tyson had his one-man show? Anybody remember that? Right? So at that time, I was really like, my business that I was building was booming. And she had shot like a indie film, but there was nothing going on for her. Like she was like, I don't know when this movie's coming out. She's like, I don't know when I'm going to work again. She's like, can you teach me what you're doing? I said, I'm happy to do it. So I ended up getting her started in my business and helping her to start building her business, because she's like, well, I can get some income going while I'm, still auditioning and whatever. I said, cool, bet. So I took her to see the Mike Tyson one-man show. We had a blast. And I remember that summer because this was the first time I was making like real money consistently, month over month over month. So, I had the luxury car and all that stuff, and I would let her drive the luxury car because I wanted her to have the experience. Like my thing is if I've learned something, if I'm having a different experience and I can share that, I wanna bring as many people into that experience as I can. Why? Because when you have those experiences, it expands your thinking, it expands your imagination. It's not about um uh putting Russell in a Rolls Royce, or putting Maria in a Ferrari, or putting Stacy in a Lamborghini. But if you sit in a Rolls Royce and you understand that a whole team of people spent a year building and crafting this finely tuned automobile with all of this luxury for another human being to drive, it just changes what you see as available and possible. And I believe the more money we make, the more of who we are comes out. So if you're a generous person, if you're someone who believes in supporting causes that you're passionate about, I'm a Doctors Without Borders guy. If if you want to help fund that script, that project that's been, you've been trying to get money for this project for 10 years. And if you have the revenue to do it, boom, you do it. So this young lady and I were working together, and she calls me one day and says, Ed, the film is coming out. You got to go see it. And I remember we got into a fight. It was a pleasant fight, but it was a fight about Django Unchained, because I like Quentin Tarantino movies. And I said, it wasn't about slavery. I said, slavery was the backdrop. It wasn't about slavery. I said, number one. I said, number two, when is the last time you ever saw a black man whipping a white man on screen? What movie have you seen that? I said, when have you ever seen that? And she's like, I don't care. Wait until you see my movie, then you'll understand. So her movie comes out, I go to see it. And when I tell you, I was sitting in my seat and I literally could not get up. I sat in my seat until the people were coming to sweep the theater of all the popcorn. I couldn't move. I immediately called my brother, Otis, Stacy, and Russell. I called Otis. I said, Otis, I was like, you have to, no. I'm sorry. That's not what happened. Otis called me because he had actually got a private screening for his church of the same film. He called me later that night and he was so like over the moon. And he was like, have you seen? I was like, yeah. I was like, bro, I couldn't move. He's like, man. And he was talking about the girl in the film. He's like, man, she gonna win an Oscar, man. I said, hold on a second. So I three-way her, and this is the woman that I'm working with. I three-way her onto the phone. I said, yo, Otis, I want you to say what you just said because I got her on the phone. He's like, you got her on the phone? And she's like, hey, Otis. He's like, oh my God, I just saw the movie. You were fantastic, blah, 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 blah. It was Lupita. Now, why do I share that story? Because I have recruited hundreds of people into my business, personally recruited. I have personally worked with thousands of people in my sales teams as I'm building them, helping them to create some level of financial success. Lupita is the only one that I've ever recruited and started in the business, and she was developing a career, and her career hit, and it took off to a totally different stratosphere. That's the only Academy Award winner that I've ever recruited. It's the only multi-millionaire that I've ever recruited. It's the only, Marvel film star, international model, print work, activist, spokeswoman. It's the only one. And I built teams of over 140,000 people. And I say that to say this. The chances of anyone having Lupita's career is like lightning in a bottle. And Lupita cannot teach anybody how to do that. What she's done, she can't duplicate that. That's God's grace and God's timing and her talent, of course. Okay. However, I've helped 1,000 families earn a residual income every month. 1,000. So I don't care what the number is for you. You may say, Ed, I want to make an extra $500 a month, extra $1,000 a month. I will tell you how to do it and what it looks like. So this is the start of a conversation, okay? And I want to make sure that you all took those questions down. Number one, I'll repeat them again. How much do you require in monthly income in order to retire and live out the rest of your days as you like? So whatever that monthly income number is, you got to add it up 12 months. And then how long do you expect to live? I know nobody knows their box date, but just give yourself an estimate, okay? Because when you look at the number, I promise you, you're going to be like, damn. Oh, damn. Okay. The second question, what's your plan of action to earn that retirement income? And then understanding the most important decisions you're going to be making. Who's your tax preparer? Who's your tax team, your accountant? Takes a little bit of time, usually, to find the right people. Unfortunately, there are some unscrupulous people like in anything. So you gotta have a very good vetting system in place for that. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars hiring the wrong people. And then understanding what is your philosophy. What do you do with a dollar? For every dollar that comes in, what is your practicing philosophy with each dollar? And what are the non-negotiables for you? And if you've been cultivating that, great. If you haven't, start now. Start now. Listen, if you're alive and you're breathing and you're physically capable, you are blessed and you are highly favored. You have a chance to completely turn your life around. You can turn your life around in 36 months. 36 months is 1,000 days. You can completely turn your life around. Have a completely different outlook financially. And guess what? All of you have enough years and experience that it doesn't have to disrupt what you're doing right now as an artist, as a creative, as a producer, etc. You know what you're doing. That you got that part. It doesn't mean that you're not still growing and getting better. I'm just suggesting to you that you take some time to start thinking creatively. How can I create leverage? How can I build a second source of revenue that can come in for the next 10, 20 years that makes good business sense? You don't have to love it. It's just got to make good business sense. Because once you get that going while you're still doing this, well, now you got a couple of success legs under your table that makes the table stronger. If you only have one leg under your table is going to be like this. You get 2 legs, now you got something. Then you add a 3rd leg. Because the idea and the outcome is like, okay, Stacy calls and says, look, I got an extra 30, 40 grand coming in every month. What do I do with it? That's the question that you want to be asking yourself 3 years from now, 4 years from now. I got an extra 30, 40 grand coming in every month. What do I do with it? How do I make it grow? What can I invest in? What's smart? This is why so many athletes get taken advantage of. This is why so many, again, new money is dumb money. My objective here is to start the conversation. Stacy's objective here was to bring us together to start thinking in more expansive ways so that we have this gathering. So is there anything that's resonating in your spirit? Any thoughts or comments that you guys want to share before we hop off? Hey, man. You got something to say?
You should invest.
Ah, you should invest. Remember the book, The Intelligent Investor. Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions about anything? Any comments? We're good, Stacy? You're muted.
No, we're
Reset.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're good.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna send out this recording. We're gonna share this. For those of you that want to learn the skill and develop in terms of what I'm doing, I'm happy to share that with you. Just send me a DM. That's my name, Ed Blunt. I'm all over social media. I'm easy to find. You can just DM me. If you don't have my phone number, DM me, okay? But I really want you all to think about what are some ways that I can create some additional revenue with my experience and my story and my track record. Because remember, what you've done, 99% of the population hasn't. They haven't done it. You have a very unique perspective. You have tremendous value. There's so much value in your story. Do not shortchange your story. Thanks so much. Have an awesome and amazing evening. Thanks for hopping on. Happy Motivate Monday. And I'll get the recording out I'll get it to Russell, Stacy, Pascal, and then you all can pass it out to whoever you want to, okay? But thanks so much, you all. Have a great night.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.